Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. There was one of our viewers, or maybe a bunch of them, I can't remember, were asking about the recently announced Elisabeth Truss, who is the new Prime Minister of UK, tax cuts and what I thought about them. So today we're going to talk about what are some changes coming to UK's tax system, kind of what the economic context is around that, and my opinion of those changes. So we're going to discuss them today. If you have comments on it, put them in the comments below, and I'm going to dive in right now. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. Thank you for your support. If you would like help, or if you're new here, welcome. I am Michael from Offshore Citizen, and we are specialists in helping you with custom international solutions for your both business and personal. So we help you to figure out the best solution for you, as well as to implement it. This is global tax solutions, this is relocating abroad, relocating your company, banking, investments, getting second citizenships, etc. So please reach out to us. You can book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below, or send a message through offshorecitizen.net. Okay, so just a little quick overview. UK was on the road to do some tax rate increases. They have a 19% corporate tax rate. They were talking about raising that up to, I believe it was 25%. The top tax bracket is 45%. And so a few of the things that were changed in this kind of latest wave that was brought in by the new Prime Minister, we'll see how long she remains popular, or if she'll be out in 2024 when they do a general election, but is reducing the top tax bracket from 45% down to 40%, stopping that tax rate increase on corporations. There's some changes in terms of eliminating some duties on the transfer of property, a few other things. And so markets didn't like this. The pound, which has already been pounded, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, the pound has been pounded relative to the US dollar, and it took a big drop down to, I think it was 1.03 something or other, and then it came back to 1.07. Anyway, it was a pretty big blow. So the markets didn't like it. And UK is facing quite high inflation, higher than the US. It's exacerbated, of course, by the fact that things priced in US dollars. If you have a weak pound, that means you have less purchasing power, and so your costs relatively, in terms of those import items, are going up. And they have to figure out something to deal with it. So let's just start with generally what are my opinion about this. So first of all, I think the idea, she also said there would be no windfall taxes. So I did a video the other day about how windfall taxes are the stupidest thing you can possibly do. They're a terrible idea. Very, very bad. There's this whole notion I've been seeing a lot from people on Twitter that, energy prices are high because oil companies are price gouging people and, profiteering and things like this. Look, the reality is when you have limited supply and you have more buyers than you have sellers, or more purchasing demand than selling demand, you're naturally going to sell to whoever's willing to pay more for it. And you're going to go up. There's some people who've been saying, what happens is they set the price and then people can buy or not. But the reality is they set that price based on the demand. It's not like they arbitrarily pick the price and are going to sell at whatever. If they can sell for more, they're going to sell for more. And so should they, because that's how they make their business work. The whole point of it is that they can't just charge an unlimited amount, because you end up in a situation where competition will sell for less. And so you do get this point where, in times like this, there's obviously more volatility in the underlying price of things like oil than you have in some other things. And certainly, although you have a commoditized, literally it's a commodity, right? So you have a lot of interchangeability between supply from here and supply from there. When there's a shortage, and you're going to kind of see, and people are going to negotiate, and it'll go back and forth, and it'll come to some sort of a market price. And why this is important is because you want businesses to be able to make money at what they're doing, so they increase the supply. The fundamental issue with inflation right now is a supply side issue. And I'll maybe make another video about it before. I've talked lots about inflation over the series of videos. I'll probably make a bunch more just because it's a big topic right now. Anyway, so in terms of that, what do I think generally about the tax thing? So I do think that it was a good idea to stop the tax increase for corporations from 19 to 25%. Why do I think that? Well, the US is at 21%. a lot of other places are kind of around that 20, 22-ish level. 19 is a competitive rate without being too obscene, okay? It's kind of like, it's in like a reasonable median point. 25% would be extremely non-competitive. I mean, you're basically higher than the majority of the EU now. Not a good idea at all. There's some notion that, oh, look, corporations should be paying a larger share, blah, blah. The reality is that corporations are much more mobile than individuals are, and so this is not the best way to optimize your tax returns, nor or to your tax receipts, nor should you really be making optimization of tax receipts your key issue. So I think just from the standpoint of competitiveness and being able to attract investment and keep companies there, it's much better that they did that. Bringing rates down from 45 to 40% at the top end, probably not particularly constructive. The concern that the market had with this whole thing, well, I guess we'll segue into that, is that the process of doing tax cuts is supposedly inflationary. Why is it supposed to be inflationary? Because people have more money, therefore they have more that they can go spend. So when people have less money, there's less demand for spending, right? And therefore, this is not so inflationary. So this was probably not a good time to do something like that. That was probably not, it's just pretty suboptimal. When it comes to things around the real estate transfers, I think, probably it was fine to leave them in place. One of the things that we know is that real estate in general is something that if you do studies and you find which types of taxes have the greatest effect on displacing people, what you find is the greatest effect on displacing is corporate tax and corporations. The second is personal income tax. Third is sales tax or VAT. And fourth is real estate tax. So real estate tax is actually a pretty good way to extract money without disrupting the number of people who are there. Like, just people don't make decisions about where to live principally based on these taxes. So that's useful to consider, and so it's probably not a great idea to cut these various different stamp duties and levies, et cetera, for transferring property. And this is especially true when likely property prices are going to take a big dump right now, since interest rates are rising. And as a result, I would expect that the number of people who are going to want to sell anyway is going to be skewed based on the fact that a bunch of them are going to be underwater. And so, yeah, I think in general, I would probably have not done that if I was them. Now, let's talk about inflation, because this is kind of the piece around it. As I said, fundamentally, what have you got? You've got a supply problem, not a demand problem. So if you certainly demand, there's a supply-demand relationship here, but what you're concerned about are not extra things. So the idea that she's saying is, all right, well, I'm going to give people more money and therefore people will have more money to invest and they'll get economic stimulus. It is definitely true that raising interest rates has a negative consequence right now because you're increasing the cost of capital. When you increase the cost of capital, it makes it more difficult to invest in increasing production, and then you don't have as much production, and that has a negative effect. But really, the core underlying issue is not really that much to do with taxes and much more to do with regulations. It's just really difficult to produce things, to get things done, etc. And when that's the case, what should happen is that the market prices should go up. The market prices should then tell people to come in as competitors and add supply to the market. But if they're hamstrung by various different onerous, overbearing regulations that make it slow to get things done, then that's an issue. Now, to be clear, because some people seem to not understand this, I'm not totally against all regulations. Clearly, you need some regulations. But you can kind of look, I was having a conversation with somebody on Twitter about this, and there's like this very basic fact that I think you can observe. They'll say, oh, well, regulations are good if, it's going to cost you more if buildings are falling down, skyscrapers are falling. It's like, well, let's go back. In 1934, around then, I think it was 1934 to 1936, the Empire State Building was built. Okay, it took 3 years. Great. Now fast forward to 2001, you have 9/11. In the wake of that, they build the Freedom Tower. It takes, I believe it was 9 years to build the Freedom Tower. Okay, so 70 years later, it took 3 times as long to build basically an equivalent building. That's bizarre. That's deranged. It's not like it's a sign that things are not really progressing and working the way that they should. And you should be working on improving that system if you're the people in power in the government. And you might say, oh, but we need these safety regulations, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't know, the Empire State Building seems pretty safe to me. I've been to New York, I've, gone and been around there, etc. Buildings not falling down. Apparently the standards they had at that time worked pretty well. So I don't necessarily see that there's a strong argument that, oh, we really needed to amp up all this bureaucracy, etc. Okay, you get into things like asbestos and various different health concerns, but I think in general you can streamline the process a lot more. And so I think my comment about the Truss tax cuts is, by and large, she should have just kind of stuck things the way they were, probably. Realistically, she's probably appealing to a certain donor base. That's probably what's really happening. But what she should probably be doing on the flip side is she should probably be saying, okay, what do we do to streamline regulations and make it really easy to get things done? What do we do to stimulate production of supply, open up new channels, et cetera? Now, obviously, some of these things they're at a bit of a tough situation with because, for example, it's not like they're going to produce a whole heck of a lot of oil themselves. So they have to look at other methods. But realistically, they could look at supplementary energy forms. They could look at, and then there's other parts of the supply chain aside from just there. You can look at housing, you can look at food, you can look at transportation costs, you can look at clothing, like there's a whole basket of things, and the amount of energy is there. Is just one part of the overall component of cost. And then she's already saying that they're going to offer subsidies to people who have electricity bills or heating bills over a certain amount. And so that would be my general position. My general position is that fundamentally we have a system that's pretty messed up in terms of the ability to get things done. The productivity is way down. There's a lot of rent seeking. There's a lot of extraction of value. There's a lot of process that slows things down. And you want to try and streamline and speed that up if you want to get out of this and think long term. And I don't really see that governments are doing a lot to solve that problem. And so I think if not this time, you'll just continue to have issues until you address the root cause. And the root cause, probably you have like second order effects beneath it, where it's like you can ask, okay, like we have all these regulations, we have these things that are making it difficult to get stuff done. We have a lack of competition, we have consolidation of major industries, we have big scale effects on production, that it's difficult to have multiple players in there. Okay, what is the root cause of those things? And let's address that so that we have a much better ecosystem. And again, I just don't see that people are working on that. So at least the positive sign is corporate taxes not going up. That's good news. And so people who are wanting to continue doing business with UK companies, that'll be a little bit better for you. So let me know what you think. Put it in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.